Friends, thank you for joining me. Now is the exciting time. We are talking about finding the real zeros. So we're going to take everything that we've learned about finding the possible rational roots of a polynomial, and we are going to put that together to be able to factor this. So heads up that you really want to know your quadratics as well, how to factor a quadratic or how to do the quadratic formula. If you don't know that information, go back, refresh that, because we are going to be touching base on that. So here's what we do. All right, here's our first one. So the first thing that we do is we look at this guy here, negative 24, and I list all my factors of 24, 1 and 24, 2 and 12, 3 and 8, and after 3 comes 4 and 6, after 4 is 5, and then after 5 is 6, and 6 is already there. So those are our possible rational roots. Now, I list them over all the possible factors of 1, so that's pretty easy. It's going to be, so possible, we're going to do, and actually I'm going to write it over here, plus minus 1, plus minus 2, plus minus 3, plus minus 4, plus minus 6, plus minus 8, plus minus 12, plus minus 24. So here's the fun part. I'm going to write it over here because I'm going to leave some space for us to do some factoring here. Now we guess and check. So what does that mean? Well, first we're going to check and see if like -1 works. And this is where we're going to use our synthetic division. So what we do is we take each coefficient from here. We make sure that if there's one missing, see how we have x to the third, x squared, x to the 1. If, for example, it went x to the third and then x to the 1, we would be missing the 2. So we would have to use a placeholder. In this case, does not require a placeholder. So 1, -12, 35, and -24. So again, I used all of my coefficients, and if there is not one shown, remember it's a 1, just like in the front here. So we're going to do some synthetic division. So all I need to do is bring down a 1 here. Now I'm ready to use my synthetic division. -1 times 1 is -1. Add those together. So that's what we're doing when we go downwards. So -13. -13 times -1 times -13 is +13, which gives me 48. That's going to give me -48, which gives me negative, it doesn't even matter because, so 72, because what we're looking for is a 0 here. And so since I don't have a 0, this -1 doesn't work. So let's do +1. Okay, so if we do +1, we're again going to copy down -12, 35, and -24. We're going to bring down our 1. All right, 1 times 1 is 1. Add those together, I get -11. 1 times -11 is -11. That's going to be +24. 1 times 24 is 24, and ta-da, that's our 0. So that's exactly what we wanted. Now, here's your next step. This is your remainder. This is your constant. This is your x. This is your x squared. Notice I was working from the right to the left. You got to start that way because sometimes it'll go up to the x to the third, x to the fourth, depending on what you're doing. So what does that mean? Well, first off, that means that we have x, so +1 is a 0. So that means we come back up here, that means x minus 1, because remember, if I set this equal to 0, I would get 1, and that's what this is. So we do opposite of whatever's in this box here. Now I write this part out. So that means I have 1x squared, or x squared, minus 11x plus 24. Ta-da, good. And now I said at the beginning that if you know how to factor your quadratics, that's a great decision because this is now a quadratic and we can probably easily factor that. So what I do is I'm going to go ahead and bring this one down. Let's see if we can factor. And x, you look at your last sign, that's positive. That tells me same signs. This tells me negative, negative. So I need a negative, negative that gives me -11. So here's all my factors conveniently of 24. And -11, it looks like if I do 8 plus 3 more, that would give me -11. So -3 and -8. Okay, so this is the factored form of this guy here. But the question was, find all the real zeros. So remember, when you're finding the zeros, you're setting it equal to 0. Remember also, zeros means roots, means your x's, your x-intercepts, that kind of thing. So we're going to set this equal to 0. And we'll use our 0 product property to say x minus 1 equals 0. So x equals +1, which remember, it was that one that was in the box, right? X equals +3, because if I added 3 to both sides, and if I added 8 to both sides, I would get x equals +8. Now, here's where it's really important. You look to see how many x's do I have? 1, 2, 3. How many should I have? Look at your highest exponent. You should have 3. Does it always work out that way? No, not at all. But it is a good guess and a good guide. So you should know if you don't have 3, you should know why. So always at the end, ask yourself, how many do I have? How many should I have? Just to make sure that you haven't missed something along the way. All right, let's try another one of those. So for this guy, we have x to the 4th. So this one's going to be a little trickier. I'm going to leave a space so that I can work to factor. But remember, I'm going to list all my factors of my last number, my constant, over the factors of my leading coefficient. So that means I only have to list them one time because my leading coefficient is 1. So plus minus 1, plus minus 5, and plus minus 25. That's it. I have 3 of these guys. Okay, so this one's a little different. It says find all the real zeros and find all the zeros, real and non-real, of the polynomial. So we're going to start by plugging and chugging. Let's do a 1 here. And you'll notice we go from x to the 4th, x squared. That means we're missing an x to the 3rd. So when I write my coefficients up here, I need to put in a placeholder for x to the 3rd. So I use 0 for that. Minus 40, minus 25. Okay, so if we've got, make sure my calculator's handy just in case I need that. All right, so let's bring down our 1. 1 times 1 is 1. Add those together, I get 1. 1 times 1 is 1. Negative 15. That's going to be negative 15. So that's negative 55. That's negative 55. That's going to be, it doesn't even matter because it's not 0. So let's try now negative 1. Oh, I said I was going to leave this blank, and then I always forget that part. So I'll rewrite it so you can see. Okay, so let me rewrite it right down here. F of x equals x to the 4th minus 16x squared minus 40x minus 25. If your constant is missing 2, you do have to put in a placeholder for that. That's a really common question I get. So negative 1 times 1 is negative 1. Add those together, 0 and negative 1. Negative 1 and negative 1 is positive 1, which gives me negative 15. Negative 1, negative 15 gives me positive 15. So that is going to be negative 25. Negative times a negative is a positive. Woohoo! 0. That means this is our remainder. This is our constant. This is our x. This is our x squared. And this is our x to the 3rd. So we have negative 1 in the box here, but we do the opposite. So x plus 1, and then I have x to the 3rd minus x squared minus 15x minus 25. Minus 25. Okay, so this is not yet a quadratic, so I can't easily factor that. So I'm going to do the same thing. I've got to list all my factors of 25 over all my factors of whatever is in the front here, which happens to be 1. So conveniently, I've already had to do that, so I have them listed here. So let's keep going and try positive 5. So if I do 5, but notice my coefficients have changed now. I have 1, negative 15, and negative 25. So if I plug in 5, all right, so now I'm ready to do this. 5 times 1 is 5, gives me 4. 5 times 4 is 20, which gives me positive 5. Oh, 5 times 5 is 25. Look at that, I get a 0. So that's my remainder constant, x squared. So let's come over here, x plus 1. Now remember, opposite of this guy, so this is x minus 5. And then I have x squared plus 4x plus 5. Okay, so looking at this guy, we need to do, so if I were to factor this guy, there's not really much that I can do in order to factor this guy. So I would end up with, because if I list all my factors of 5, I've got 1 and 5, but I would have to have same signs because this tells me same signs, this tells me positive, positive. So if this was a 6, I would be able to factor it, but I'm not able to. So we can leave it just like this. Now, to find the zeros, let's talk about that. So we set it equal to 0. We've already found these two zeros. X equals negative 1, and set this equal to 0, we would get positive 5. Now, if I wanted to find the non-real zeros of this, the easiest way to do that is your quadratic formula. Remember, x equals negative b plus minus the square root b squared minus 4ac all divided by 2a. When you're using your quadratic formula, I highly advise that you find your discriminant first. So b squared minus 4ac. So b is 4, so 4 squared minus 4 times 1 times 5. So that gives me 16 minus 20, which is negative 4. This is why I say find your discriminant first. Two reasons. One, most kids make their mistake on the discriminant. And two, now that I know my discriminant is negative 4, I know that I'm going to have two non-real solutions. So I definitely couldn't factor that. Okay, so now that I've found my discriminant, I'm ready to use my quadratic formula. So x equals negative b, which is 4, plus minus the square root of my discriminant, which was negative 4, all divided by 2 times a, and my a is 1, so just 2 times 1. Now, a little side work here. The square root of negative 4 is really just 2i, right? So this is 2i. So what I have is x equals negative 4 plus minus 2i over 2. Always ask yourself, do these three things have something in common? Yes, they have a 2 in common. So if I factor out a 2, I'm left with negative 2 plus minus I over 2. Cancel these guys out, and x equals negative 2 plus minus I. I can move my x there. All right, so let's go back and take a look. I have one solution here, and then I have two different solutions here. I have the positive and the negative. That's 4 solutions, and if I look at my original equation, or my original function, it's x to the 4th, so I should have 4 solutions. They all have a multiplicity of 1. They all occur only one time. But that is how you factor to find the real and non-real solutions. So hopefully that helps, because that's really tricky stuff. But if you have any questions, let your teacher know. Otherwise, we'll see you next time.